I want to thank my fellow podmates. It's been wonderful working with Bill and Jennifer and Deborah and Wes. They've made a hard act to follow. They've given you a lot of specifics about flipping. My talk to you today is a little more, where does that lead us? Where does flipping take us? Not so much on the specifics. But what I'm suggesting to you today is that we take all or most of first year and put it online. This idea came out of a lot of the discussions last fall, which I'm sure you heard, the suggestion that we should take the third year and get rid of it. We even had the President of the United States suggesting that that was a good idea. So what I want to suggest is instead, maybe the year that we can move, the year that has material that might lend itself to this kind of thing, as my fellow pod presenters have suggested, would work well. And that it might make law school more accessible, that there's an embedded great thing in such an idea. We know that legal education is better. It's gotten much better. Coming out of some of these wonderful conferences and all that we have learned from each other and changes that have already been made over the last 20 years. But costs, as we know, have made it prohibitively expensive, particularly for those who might have difficulty even considering going to law school. I had a colleague say this in a meeting, and you may have heard it in your own meetings. At the University of Denver, the average student debt load when they graduate is $130,000. If they take full ride, and this may be true of your schools as well, it's true of many schools, if they take full ride, it's $185,000. And the suggestion that that is merely a mortgage, I think overlooks the reality that maybe that means those people can't actually have a mortgage. And so this picture of this phantom home is my visual to go with that really troubling idea. We in the Legal Academy declare the importance of inclusiveness. We teach social responsibility, and we take great pride in that. We train for justice and equity. These are things that are very important to us in our teaching. And yet, I worry that we have, with the increase in cost in the last 20 years, perpetuated the already advantaged. This is, in my view, a tremendously important concern for the 21st century. We need to fix that. It is urgent that we do so. The 21st century, the world that our students are going into, that we're preparing them for, is one that will be multicultural, that will require a much broader set of understandings about how the world works. I said this in my book, it's been said by others. The education system we have today was created at a time when information was scarce. But information is no longer scarce. That simple phrase has profound reality that we have heard some already about how we could move some of the information-intensive work into a flipped environment and do the small group work the way we know it needs to be done. Teaching large classes was always an economic choice. I mean, all the way back to Langdell. That's how he sold the law school to President Eliot. It has rarely been a pedagogical one, although there will be many ideas shared here today that suggest that there are improvements that could be made even in this context. And I don't mean to devalue those at all, but the reality is that teaching these 70 and 80 and 90 student classes is an economic choice. But we know in our hearts that the best and most memorable teaching is in that small group work. We've already heard testimony of that fact here today. and in the one-on-one work that we do with our students. That's where the light bulbs go on. We know that. And my goodness, we give them freedom, they teach each other. They teach each other great things if we let them do that, if we don't confine them in that classroom environment, if we give them the opportunity. We simply must reduce the cost, and there is a great deal of discussion about that. But we're going to do that by cutting out the third year at the same time where we know the deepest learning happens, the clinical work, the small group work. That's the practice-ready work that's going on. We're going to get rid of that year? How does that make sense? What if we put most of the first year online and open it up to a larger cohort and priced it more cheaply? And stopped being chained to the LSAT, which is known to have a disparate impact. And we let students show in that year that they're not just in law school by default, we've all had those students, that they have a facility with it, whatever color and background, that this is something they're good at. And they didn't have the LSAT necessarily as their gatekeeper. We let them do the 1L courses, mostly online, meet competency standards at various stages. Heck, let them take 2 years and continue to work and not lose that opportunity cost of the first year. They graduate to 2L, where we do the high-touch work in smaller classes. It's what we're good at, and it's what we love to do, all of us. I've done the numbers on this. No loss in revenue. Why? Because we admit many more students into that less expensive first year. And some students, that might be all they want. They might think they want to go to law school. They decide that's all they want once they do that first year online. Or they really come and get a certificate at the end of it, and that literally is what they planned to do. Yes, we probably have to retool some first-year teachers. They will love it, though, I suspect. There might be some Saturday classes, good to bring cohorts together. Some hybrid certainly is fine and probably a good idea. It could bring smaller learning groups together who could meet online in various ways using technology we know of, but also to work together face-to-face, perhaps on a Saturday. If we don't do this, my fear is somebody else will. And they might even show equal or better learning. And as we move in the direction of doing these kinds of things, I hope we'll be very careful about our testing, our assessment, so that we can look at good benchmarks before we make these changes and show that the learning for our students is just as good, if not better. If you'll bear with me, I'd like to read a short poem. It's written by Martin Espada, and it goes as follows. Who burns for the perfection of paper. At 16, I worked after high school hours at a printing plant that manufactured legal pads. Yellow paper stacked 7 feet high and leaning as I slipped cardboard between the pages, then brushed red glue up and down the stack. No gloves, fingertips were required for the perfection of paper. Smoothing the exact rectangle. Sluggish by 9 p.m., the hands would slide along the suddenly sharp paper and gather slits thinner than the crevices of the skin, hidden. The glue would sting, hands oozing, till both palms burned at the punch clock. 10 years later, in law school, I knew that every legal pad was glued with the sting of hidden cuts, that every open law book was a pair of hands, upturned and burning. Martin Espada went to Northeastern Law School in the early 80s when law school cost quite a bit less than it does today. He went on to become a tenant lawyer. I don't know about your law school, but that's a voice I feel is missing at many law schools, and my own included. So we need to rethink, redesign, retool, honor what we know we must do for our students, for the future, for all of us. That's my book, Law School 2.0, my blog, my name. That's where I live on Twitter. Thank you all very much.